Hello and welcome to your fifth lesson for the first topic of media studies, an introduction to the media, and today we're going to be looking at magazines. To start off with, we need to know the difference between a magazine front cover and a magazine article. In media studies, magazines are media products and they are print format, but there's a difference between a magazine front cover and an article within the magazine. What differences do you know? Here is our title slide for this lesson. Again, we're looking at magazines, and in the bottom left you can see we're still on our first topic, an introduction to the media, and we're on lesson number 5. So today we need to learn about magazines in the contemporary media landscape. Now, the contemporary media landscape basically means anything relevant to the last 5 years or so. Magazines used to be a lot more popular and a lot more widely available than they are today, so we need to look a little bit about why that might be. So we're going to explore the diversity of magazines, the different appeal of different types of magazines to different audiences, the conventions of magazines, and also consider the popularity of magazines and how the impact of new media and digital technology might have affected magazine readership. The rule of thirds is a photographic technique to do with layout. It's how you can compose an image, especially on a magazine front cover, to make it seem appealing to the eye. If you split your front cover into 3 equal sections, or into thirds, horizontally and vertically, all of the important aspects or features should broadly fall within or on these lines. It's not an exact science, but here again you can see how the rule of thirds is generally applied to magazine front covers. The rule of thirds is not specific to magazine front covers. In fact, any piece of visual print media will utilise the rule of thirds, a film poster, an advert, or even the inside articles of a magazine. Here we have 2 copies of a magazine front cover, both for the same magazine. However, they do look very different. One of them is a conventional magazine front cover. That means it's what we would expect to see on a magazine front cover. Whereas the second one is not as conventional. Do you have any idea why this might be? It's actually because they are doing 2 different jobs. The one on the left, the more conventional movie poster front cover, is designed to be sold in shops. So the front cover has a job to do. It basically acts as an advert for the magazine itself, so it needs to include conventions that will help to sell it. The one on the right is a subscriber magazine, which means the audience has already paid for and subscribed to get a monthly issue of this particular magazine. Therefore, the front cover doesn't have to do the same job. It can actually be more image-based and more of just an aesthetically pleasing looking design. As we just discussed, conventions are the expected ingredients that you would find on a media product. So what are the conventions of magazine front covers? You need to go online and find at least 2 different magazine front covers, put them into your notes and make a list of their conventions. Again, that's the elements that you would expect to see on most magazine front covers. Earlier, we said that the job of a front cover of a magazine is usually, conventionally, to sell that magazine, to convince the audience that they need to pick it up off the shelf and buy it. The inside pages of a magazine, the articles, have a very different job. They are there to inform, entertain, excite, and educate audiences. So, what are the conventions of magazine articles? Again, go online, try and find a few examples of some magazine articles. Here we have two examples of a double page spread. That's where the article goes across 2 pages. And make a list of the conventions that you find. There are, of course, many different types of magazine, and I don't mean necessarily their content, I mean the way the magazine operates. So you have weekly magazines, monthly, quarterly, that's how often they come out. And how often the magazine is released will also dictate the price, the quality, and the content within that magazine. You also get specialist magazines. That's magazines that are targeted at very niche audiences, that's small groups of people. Things like a particular sport, so it might be a fishing magazine or a car magazine. Then you also get souvenir magazines. Harry Potter, when that came out, they released a souvenir magazine with the release of each new film. These are usually collected by superfans. Here we have two examples of magazine front covers. One is from Total Carp magazine, which is monthly, costs about £4.50 an issue, and it is focused on fishing, which is largely accepted as the UK's most enjoyed hobby. The demographic, the target audience, is generally men aged between 20 and 60, and we know that in the UK approximately £3 billion a year is spent on fishing. On the right hand side we have Heat magazine, which is a weekly magazine and costs about £1.65 an issue. Gossip is a topic which is appreciated by many different audiences and different types of people, but Heat in particular is aimed at the demographics of women aged between about 15 and 60. So what we have here are examples of magazines that target niche audiences. They appeal to only a small specialised group of people. Now that's not to say that's not a lot of people. There are a lot of people that like fishing, but they are all generally the same type of person, the same demographic. So niche audiences are small specialised groups. The opposite to that would be a mass audience where you appeal to lots of different types of people. Magazines are actually created specifically for niche markets and niche audiences, not for the mass audience. We need to try and work out why that might be. Initially, we might think that the more people that read this magazine, the more money we would make, because we would sell more copies of the magazine. But that's not actually how the funding of magazines and the financial pressures of magazines works. Content space is limited. If a magazine comes out every week or every month, there is not a lot of pages to put a lot of different types of content. So actually, if you focus on one theme or topic, you can get a better quality product. Also, audiences don't really want to spend money on the rest of the content, the stuff they don't want. And also, advertising. Most of the pages in a magazine are adverts, and these need to be targeted to specific audiences. There's no good putting a fishing rod advert in a gossip magazine. You're wasting your money as a seller of fishing rods because you're not going to get that advert in front of people that are potentially going to be your customers. So you really want to have advertising space that targets specific audiences, and that's how magazines can make more money. So how do magazines make money? A magazine like this, Total Film, which is a monthly magazine and costs around £4 a month for this particular issue. Well, that will cost the manufacturer about £6 to make that actual copy. So if they do 100,000 copies, that's cost them £600,000, but they're only going to get back £400,000. So it's actually cost them to make this magazine. Think of the glossy pages, the writing and the journalism, the printing and the distribution. It costs a lot of money to make and get these magazines out there, much more than they actually charge. So therefore, how do they make money? Well, looking at these two charts, you can see the source of income is mostly from advertising. It's the adverts within a magazine that make it money. Now again, you might think, well, the more people that see these adverts, the more money I can make, the more I can charge for those adverts. But it's actually the types of people. Again, this is why niche marketing is really important, because a magazine with a niche audience, you know exactly what adverts you can put in these magazines. So how can magazines make more money? Well, they can either increase the amount of money they make from advertising, by having even more specific audiences and more data on the audiences they're actually targeting. But actually, there's something they can do to reduce the costs of production, namely the distribution and the printing. If these magazines moved online, they wouldn't have to distribute the product, that's putting them on trucks and sending them to shops. They wouldn't have to print them. This would make it so much cheaper to make these magazines in the first place, and ultimately generate more money for the producers of the magazine. Also, there's a cost to the environment that would be lost. No trucks burning fossil fuels, no paper, so no trees being cut down. So actually, going online is a really good way of reducing the costs of the production. And also, you could go online and increase your income because your advertising can be even more specific. With tracking of cookies and tracking of people's internet usage, you can build a profile on that particular audience member who's looking at your magazine online and give them specific personalized advertisements that they would want. So rather than having 100,000 copies of this magazine with the same advert in it, you can have 100,000 copies out there with different adverts in it. And that again is going to be able to generate you more income. Over the past few decades, the readership figures of magazines have been going down. What that means is fewer people are reading magazines than they used to. Why do you think that might be? Well, over the last few decades, there's been a great deal of development in media technologies. There are now other more exciting forms of media. Everybody has a smartphone on them, so they can access things online. So picking up a physical copy of a magazine is actually a lot less convenient. So why are online magazines becoming popular? Here we have several arguments that try to explain why for audiences and producers it's a good idea to go digital, to move your print products into e-media products. Now this is an example of convergence, which we've covered in a previous lesson, modern technologies incorporating older forms of media. Of course, the convenience of products going online is great for audiences, and we've already spoken about the price. But the fact that online products are connected is really important. Audiences can interact, share, like, and respond, which increases the enjoyment of the product, but also it helps out the producer in gathering data. These products can also be live. If you have a magazine that's been printed and you make an error in that magazine, it's too late, it's already been distributed to the shops. Whereas if it's online, you can make a quick adjustment. It also means breaking news stories can be added to your magazine at a click of a button. Advertising, again, online advertising can be targeted to specific individuals, making it so much more valuable. Online products also create communities. It's an environment where like-minded people can actually get together. Take a fishing magazine. If that's online, different people interested in fishing can actually comment, join a little community, and discuss their fishing tips. We said earlier that the environment can be saved to some degree with this because there's less paper waste and it's better for the planet. And then obviously you've got this idea of convergence, the fact that different formats and platforms are combining. So not only would it be a print product online, but also you can have a link to videos and games and other interactive media content. Don't forget that although we've been discussing magazines, these arguments can be applied to any media product that's going online. Based on everything we've discussed so far, do you think magazines have a future? Some people think that print media is dead, or at least dying. As modern audiences are craving new technologies and want to access media through digital platforms, for all the reasons we just spoke about, some people think that printed media might cease to exist with everything being digital and online. Can you produce any arguments to discuss the future of magazines? You've made it to the final learning check of this lesson. Check out these 4 boxes and see if you can complete them. Now is the perfect time to check your confidence on the completion of the learning objective. Did you manage to successfully complete the basic, moderate and advanced success criteria? Here is the terminology that was specifically used in this lesson. If you manage to get through all of the content of this lesson and there's still time to spare, have a go at this extension task. Design a new school magazine. As always, here are some examples of exam questions and how the content from this lesson might appear on your exams. Again, well done for getting through this lesson. That was lesson 5 of the first topic of media, an introduction to media studies, and I look forward to speaking to you again in lesson 6.